just going to give you a little bit about me. Like, why am I here talking about this, and why should you listen to me? So, as you can see on the slide, I've got my favorite quote on the board, which is, "To be truly radical is to make hope possible, not despair convincing." So I love to live by this quote, as cheesy as it sounds, because I grew up, I like to say, my career in the charity sector, specifically micro charities. So my first job in the charity sector in my early 20s was literally me and the CEO, and we were a national organization. So and from there, I went on to the lofty climbs of a 5-person charity, which felt huge for me. But I totally get what it is to have huge ambitions and zero resource to deliver those ambitions. And from there, I was recruited by a friend in the sector to help build his social enterprise, where the two of us went from piloting a program in 2 NHS hospitals, and within 4 years, we were in 70% of A&Es in England, having trained 30,000 NHS staff in improving experiences for young people coming to A&E with mental health crisis. And we did that using tech, and I will talk you through that later. So what I'm doing now is I've founded a company called Purpose Built, and my ambition for that is to help there be more good organizations in the world because we desperately need them, especially now. It's so important. And I know from experience how hard it can sometimes be. So my ambition with Purpose Built is to create the tools and support that I needed when I started out or when I was working and leading charities. So, a bit about my experience is I've had over a decade of experience in charities and social enterprises, and 8, 9 years of that have been in leadership positions and running social enterprises. So that's enough about me. Before we get started properly, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Like, is the main thing you want to get out of this session today, or your main concern about using tech? If you could put that in the chat, and then Robin, if you could let me know what it says, because I can't share screen and see the chat. The joy of technology. So anything that you're worried or want to know about using tech as a company or a charity with limited resources, but big ambitions. So
So we have a comment from Darcy here, which is staying genuine.
yes, big one and good one. Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about that a bit later in terms of the getting the balance right between like where is the human touch and where does technology come in to support that.
Absolutely. And it's something, so I am not a tech whiz. I am someone who's learned to use tech as a tool to get me to where I want to be with the charity and have the impact that we want to have. So I'll talk you through that. So I'll go to the
So
next.
I've got a couple more, Karen,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, go for it.
Yep. So I've got from Louise has put that cost and becoming overly reliant on tech, the environmental impact of AI as well.
Yes.
Darcy, as a fund giver, how can I tell that fund applications are real? I guess as opposed to being AI generated.
Mhm.
And then from Helen, we want to know how AI can help save time for volunteers.
Cool. Yes, that's really good to hear because we are covering majority of that in this session. And a lot of the things that I myself have grappled with in my journey of like using tech and AI. So let's get into it. So I say here, fueled by humanity, enabled by tech. So I want to start out by saying that I don't think that technology is the answer to everything. I think it's a tool that can help us get to where we want to go. And I have worked in spaces where I'm meeting people, and the charities I work for are meeting people at really vulnerable points in their life. So whether that's like at A&E, at a mental health service, haven't been able to get a job for over a year, and their mental health suffered, um, refugees and displaced people. Like I genuinely believe that at those moments we have two main things. We have a moral duty to give a great service at first point of contact because it's so important to that person and it can be devastating for that to not be good. And secondly, you need to be able to speak to a person. So I am not a proponent of automate everything and put a chat bot on your website and just grow exponentially. It isn't growth for growth's sake. It's about having the positive social impact and really understanding the experience that you need people to have with your charity. So it always has to be fueled by humanity and fueled by your actual values and what you want to achieve, which is why I'm always banging on about your strategy and goals being clear before you go to use the tech, because there's a lot out there and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for. So things like this really help, like hearing from people who have done it before and people like Robin who are more expert in what tech can do and show you how to use it. So tech is the tool and not the solution. I'm going to tell you a quick story now about one experience I've had of using tech when I didn't want to and how it actually helped me. So I mentioned previously that while I was a leader in a small charity, a colleague of mine from the sector came to me and said, I've received pilot funding for this project I knew he'd been working on for years. I need to build a company around it. We need to deliver, like, have training teams. We need to build a company. Can you help me build the company? And I was like, sure. And I actually didn't think about it for as long as I should have done. I was like, I'll come and help you do it because I really wanted to have that impact that I knew that he'd be able to have. So the way that it worked is that we built co-produced training, which was basically produced by young people with mental health experience in hospitals, um, hospital staff with experience of dealing with young people who came into A&E and mental health expertise. And the point of the training was to improve the experience of young people in those situations by upskilling the staff in hospital. There was a lot of data, we'd done a lot of digging that we knew that that was like our way to have impact. We had an amazing training. It was delivered by the young people. We went into hospitals. We spent a day with the teams. We had difficult conversations. Our impact data was like 98% of people who went on the training said it would positively impact the way that they did their jobs in the future. We had extra contracts coming in to deliver to other hospitals. We were like hiring training teams. We were on a high. And we always said we would never go online with the training because it was all about the people in the room being there together. And that's what made it work. And then what happened? March 2020, COVID hit. And we had literally no choice. We knew that we had to continue doing what we were doing because we believed that what we were doing worked. We could see that it worked. We couldn't do what we were doing because the world was telling us that we couldn't. So we had to think about how do we use tech to help us continue to have this social impact that we wanted to have and to help people. So we did a lot of, we'd always been quite obsessed by data, which really helped us. And I would really encourage you to, if you're not already, you probably are, collect that impact data that all your different like programs of work are having. Also very passionate about having lived experience employed in teams. So we had groups of people who worked with us to help us develop the training, but we employed people within our company who had direct lived experience of this, of like being in hospital with mental health. And that allowed us to quickly tap in to what actually worked. So by looking at that data and looking at what worked, we realized that actually being in the room, although it was pleasant and it did help because there was pizza as well, we realized that the like light bulb moment was people hearing from the young people. So we quickly pulled together like a 1 hour version of the training. We had to put it online. I was literally sending our team of young people like pop-up banners and ring lights and secondhand iPhones and doing like recording over Google Meets. And then within 6 weeks, we had an online tool. It was patchwork together, but we did that and we offered that out free to anyone who worked in the NHS during the pandemic. And we ended up having 10,000 people do that training within 6 weeks. And most importantly, our impact data stayed solid at 98% of people said it would positively impact the way that they did their work. And then from there, we were then able to think, okay, we can reach more people using online. How do we build out the full day training to keep the momentum, but then bring in a bit more of the human element? So that's what we did. And we ended up that enabled us to go into 70% of A&Es in England and train nearly 40,000 people, which was amazing. It was so great. And we wouldn't have been able to do that had we not used tech, and importantly, had we not had the data and the insight into the experience of the people who would be impacted by it. So yeah, what we then were able to do as well, because people were self-directing through the main training, we were then able to offer enhanced experience by um, using our team of young people with lived experience to advise on specific projects within hospitals and work more closely with hospital staff, which we never would have been able to do if they'd just been delivering the training. So we did that, we stuck to our values, and we were really proud to deliver a great product. And I know I since left that company to set up Purpose Built, but I know that they're nearly at 100%. There will be within 2 years of hospitals. So amazing. We never wanted to do it, but when we did, we realized it was a great thing to do. So it was the tool to help us have that impact. We used lived experience and data to really embed like the genuine element. And we freed up human time to do more in-depth human work where a robot could do the robot work. And I just want to say that tech amplifies what already exists. So I always say this to people, like there's so many platforms out there. So I don't know if you've heard of Monday.com. It's a project management software. Despite what they say on the website, that isn't going to make you a good project manager. If you don't have processes in place, that's not going to help you. That's just going to be another thing to manage. Trello, which I do love, it's not going to make you more productive unless you have a process or a system in place already that it then enables. So it's all about getting your house in order and then figuring out what you need. So I'm going to talk you through a little process of like how to very quickly, because I know that time is literally of the essence when you're working in a small charity, but just a way that you can quickly check in and make sure everything's aligned and you know what tool you need. Is everyone still with me so far?
Yeah, definitely, Karen. I think it's also, and as you say, like the miracles of technology is that like even we can have a webinar like this where I know we have people joining from all over the UK, but also from outside the UK as well. It's just like
Amazing.
technology can bring us together as well.
Exactly. And I know that we have, there's pros and cons, there's risks and benefits to everything. And I know, Robin, you're going to go through in more detail, like tools and considerations. But again, making hope possible. It's so easy to get that despair coming in, especially with the way that news is reported. Everything is there to outrage us and upset us so that we click. But we can use things in a considered way and intentional way to help us. And that's what we're really trying to do here. So we're talking about growing your charity. And obviously the caveat to that is what growth means is individual to your charity. As I said, I am not a proponent of growth for growth's sake. It's like growth can mean you might want a bigger team to deliver what you need to deliver, or you might want to grow your social impact, so the amount of people that you can help, or it might be growing your revenue. It might be all three. But I I know that I'm not speaking to an audience who are just like, oh, we're going to grow and get rich. Like that's literally not why we're here. But there are, from having worked across several charities and social enterprises, there are some key themes that always come up that mean to survive, you have to be able to move quickly and be laser focused. I'm going to talk a little bit more about laser focus in the next section, but this move quickly thing, especially now, is so important. And it is hard when you're a small charity and you haven't got a lot of people and you're already working over capacity all the time anyway, and you don't have different teams. Like when in my charity that I led, I was the comms person, I was the fundraising person, I ran the national programs, and I also did the HR and recruitment. That's the reality. So I'm not here for like consultants that are going to give me a nice copy and paste strategy that I just literally can't implement. But moving quickly helps you react to the things that are emerging in the world. And there are three things that help you do this. just from my experience and my experience with the clients that I've worked with. So first is communication. So good communication with your staff team all the time, not just when there's a crisis or something to respond to, but good communication channels. There are tech platforms that can help with this. Again, figure out what you need, but things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, if you like Microsoft Teams, um, or even like a good email, sort of a way of emailing, but just having like clear rules in place of like what you're going to use, why you're using it, and what you don't use it for. So, for example, when we have a Slack channel and one of my clients, Slack is used for like chatting and working through a problem because we're a remote team. Email is used for external comms with outside people and also to send important documents, anything like that needs to be able to keep track of. But we mainly have moved to Slack now, and it's improved productivity and it keeps comms up as well. Audience insight, again, I talked about this quite a lot in the previous section, is so key. So when I say audience, I'm talking about the people who benefit from your charity, and also the people who you work with. So you would say stakeholders. Just obsessively collecting good data is never a bad thing. That data always then, when you need to make a confident decision, even if you're feeling a bit jittery about it, you're like, I've got the data to back up. And when I say data, I don't just mean like the numbers. I mean, you're talking to your people all the time. You're employing people and paying people with lived experience in your company. I can't stress that enough because you get insight that you would never get just from doing focus groups. So yeah, confident decisions and good data. And I think Robin's going to touch on this later, but so AI is actually amazing for quickly analyzing data. You need to keep in mind considerations around GDPR, which I know Robin's going to talk about. But also, if you don't have the good data to start with, AI isn't going to help you. A spreadsheet isn't going to help you. Like you need to have good data in to get good data out. So I think having those three things means that when the moment comes where you're like, oh no, we can't deliver our service in hospitals anymore, and we need to still deliver, what are we going to do? It allows you to move quickly because you've got everything you need to make those decisions. Are you still with me?
Yeah, carry on. There's a really good question here from
Yeah.
Becky. Could you give some examples of what you mean by good data? Like, what does that
Yes.
look like?
Yeah. So good data, very basic form. It's like numbers or stories that can tell you something useful. So, for example, there's lots of different types of data. There is, I'm going to use an example of delivering training sessions, as because there's lots of different data that we collected around that and we used. So, good data is always consistent. So, if you're collecting simple things like attendee numbers, you'll collect that consistently across every training that you do. You'll have like a good spreadsheet is fine for that. You don't actually need fancy technology to collect good data. Um, Good like collecting impact data, like how effective is this thing that we are delivering? Is it doing what we want it to deliver? You can do very simple things, like old school simple things like pre and post data. So you ask a set of questions around their confidence or feelings before, you ask the same questions at the end, and then you've got a data to show like the movement of the confidence level, for example. Again, good data is that you're recording it consistently across everything so that you can compare, and also that you are collecting full data sets as much as possible. So that would mean you're asking the same questions and you've got the same responses across the range. When you've got that, it means that you can not only say how impactful this one training session was, but because we've got a consistent data set, we can then look at it across a whole program of work. And if we are saying this is the social impact we want to have, here is the date, here are the things that tell us that we're doing that, and you apply that to across your whole program of work, not just your training, it means you can tell a wider story about what you're doing. And that's great for funders. Like the data that we collected, honestly, it was what sold it. Because we said this can work, we've got testimonials, we've also got the numbers. And also around good data is the stories and testimonials and voices of the people who are using what you're delivering, or benefiting from. And that, as I said, that's just as important as like the numbers game, because that depth of data, if you're like running regular focus groups, for example, with a smaller proportion of people, you can get real depth. You can hear what's working, what's not working, what you're doing that might be a bit problematic or blocking people, how you can fix it, where the solutions are. So that's what I would say is good data, and just making sure that that's recorded and that the people who are part of those sessions get sight of the notes and can like feedback on them to make sure that you're representing it properly. Does that answer the question? I don't want to just go on a big ramble about data, which I could do.
No, I think that's great. If you have any follow-up questions, put them in the chat. But no, I think that's great. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah. So just consistent and recorded well, like on a spreadsheet, not on bits of paper. I have done that in the past, way in the past. I don't recommend doing it. Um, so another really important thing is laser focus. Now, I want to preempt this section by saying that I understand that when you are a charity, sometimes your strategy can feel a bit more vague than you want it to. Sometimes it doesn't. And in an ideal world, I would always say very specific, small strategy to get you to where you want to go. But I understand that you need to be able to function, and having a broader strategy means you might be able to apply to different grants, to get more money and to deliver your work. As I said, in an ideal world, you don't have to do that, but we know what it's like to be stuck in that the grant cycle. I once worked in a charity where there were more strategic aims on our strategy than there were members of the team, and there were sub things under that as well. And what ends up happening is everyone's just doing everything. You don't feel like you're moving forward. It's demoralizing. So where you can avoid that, definitely a very succinct focus strategy works and is the best practice. Where you can't have that for whatever reason, having specific goals for a period of time, like a year or a quarter, can really help sort of bring you more focus. And this focus is really, really important, because it will be the difference between you delivering large, like high social impact, to just doing a lot of stuff like scattered energy. So when I'm doing this exercise, this is an exercise that I say invented, but it's not rocket science, and I'm sure everyone's got a version of this. It's the effort impact matrix. And what this really helps you do very quickly is to get a snapshot of what your organization is doing and how it's doing in that, and where we can make efficiencies. The great thing about this exercise is that you can do it at an organizational level with your team, looking at specific like chunks of work. And you can also do it as, if you are lucky enough to have teams within your organization, you can do it as a team, and you can also do it as an individual. So it's just a really great, quick way to do this. And it's all about focusing on your why and not how you're doing it. So it's not about being attached to your delivery method, like delivering live training in hospitals. It's about, what do we want to deliver? And where I sometimes see clients getting tripped up is that they get attached to how they've always done it or how they're doing it now, when really what you always want to be thinking is the impact we want to have and what people need, and how do we deliver that? So if you have a pen and paper around, I would love you to join in, and do this. I do this quite often, and I still get surprised at what I get in there. So there's never going to be any judgment from me. So the way that this works, if you're not familiar, is that the horizontal line is the amount of effort that goes into an activity. And then the vertical line is the impact that it has. So by impact, I mean how much it moves you towards your goal that you want to have. So if you want to just spend a couple of minutes thinking about like programs and activities that your organization's doing, and sort of plot them into this matrix, and then we're going to go through some of the results. I'm not going to ask anyone to share if they're not comfortable, so please be honest with yourself. This isn't a kind of like share and care session in that way, but you can share if you want to. But the most important thing is that you're honest with yourself, especially around that impact section, because it can be quite a shock. I know this because I do it so often, and I still am like, why am I doing this?
Do you have an example, Karen, of something that's like, say, like high effort but low impact?
I do. I'm going to wait till the next
Okay,
bit
okay.
because I've got some specific examples.
Okay, cool.
So if I move on to the slide to talk you through, um, I'm just aware of time as well. So here we've got the where I sort of like categorize them. So in your low effort, high impact, that's a great, lovely bit where you want most things to fall. Easy wins where you're working, you're working smart, not hard. You're deploying your team resources, you're repeating these actions and you're getting results. And you really want about 60 to 75% of your activities to be up here. Um, that's the lovely section. And then you've also got high effort, high impact. Like high effort doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means that it's the big team pushes that can be like your big fundraiser or your big like platform you're building, for example. So a really like simple example of this is when we were delivering our in-person training, it was a big effort in terms of staff time, getting it all organized, getting people signed up in the room, but it was big impact because it really made an impact on people. By implementing our sort of online version of it, we moved that over to easy wins in terms of people going through the training. Like the getting people signed up was easier because it was self-directed. We didn't have to get them all in one room at the same time. If you're a busy A&E nurse, that's great. We don't have to be there physically watching you while you do the training. So once they're signed up, they're there. So that meant we could then deploy our resources into doing the more sort of like human embedding community building. So your big wins are great. You don't want to have everything as a big win. You want to have, I'd always say like aim for one big win per quarter, depending on how it comes out. So like 25% of your time. And again, these are just ballpark figures. Now, it's the ones below this line that are sometimes a bit shocking, like the pointless ones that you do all the time, the busy work that make you feel very productive. They're maybe your comfort zone activities, but you're not actually moving the needle, and they eventually become demoralizing and it erodes your confidence. Posting on social media without a good strategy behind it definitely sits in there. Definitely sits in there. And company killers. These are, I mean, it's a bit dramatic, but these are activities that they drain so much of your resource, but they don't achieve a lot. And I always jokingly say here, board papers. I am a trustee. I can say it. There are ways that we can do all these things that don't have to drain resource and do have impact. I think especially in a small charity when every minute and every bit of resource is so precious, you can't afford to have anything in here or in here. So you want to get rid of those or find a way maybe to make these pointless things more impactful. And if you can't, just don't do them. Just don't do them. Okay, so how do we use tech for this? So the good thing about having something plotted on a visual matrix like this, it's not just a fun activity, but it also gives you a snapshot of where you are. And you can then think, okay, how do we make things easy wins, so reduce effort, and how do we increase their impact? So it's an or on there, but actually what you want is both. But normally by making something an easy win, the kind of knock-on effect of that is that you increase the impact. So by putting our training online in a good, meaningful way meant we could reach more people and have higher impact. But it also made someone going through the training an easy win. So there are ways that we can do this. I'm aware of time, and I know that Robin's going to talk us through some actual practical ways that we can do it and some tools out there and some considerations. But what I wanted to say is you can do a lot with an ambitious team. I guess I don't really need to tell you that. Like, you know what it's like to work in these small charities. You are so important. Like, small, tiny charities keep our society going and our communities running, especially where we've got no services anymore that are paid for by the government. So yeah, you're doing amazing work, and I really hope that work like Robin and I are doing can support you to continue to do it. I'm offering some free strategy sessions to anyone who's attending here today or watches the recording, and Robin's going to send around some information about my services as well. And I do offer a discount for charities. Thank you for listening to me. I know there's probably some questions coming up, but I'm going to pass over to Robin and then I think we'll do Q&A at the end if there's time. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Let's yes, keep putting chat questions in the chat, but as you say, Karen, let's like pick them up maybe at the end. So we're just gonna quickly do a little bit of technical wizardry. I'm gonna share my screen now. So just give us 2 seconds. Um, so what I'm going to share with you today is really a follow-on from what Karen has shared, and particularly focusing on that reduce effort, increase impact idea, because that's where I really see the value of AI. So I put my QR code on screen. I know I'm already connected to a lot of you, but if you have specific questions about AI, I'm going to give you some really specific use cases today, because as Karen said, there's so many tools out there. I can't cover all of them or every single way we can use AI, but I am always happy to have a 30-minute call, talk to you about AI, talk to you about your problems, and try and solve problems for you one-on-one. So you can, all my contact details, you can scan this with the mobile phone, or obviously I'll email out the recording later and that will have my details on as well. So a really important thing where I like to start with AI is that it's always to support our work and not replace us. And this really ties in with Karen's message around the human touch, right? We don't want to lose that humanity. Also, I see that AI often is presented as kind of being black and white, like all or nothing. So like, either we can use AI or we can like stay human. Actually, what we need is a blend of both. Using human judgment to know when to use AI and then when to sort of stay human and leave the AI tools out of it. And the only way we can do this is by learning, by trial and error, and by experimenting with different tools that will work for us. Start small and stay curious is kind of my motto when it comes to AI, because things are constantly changing and evolving. But where I would say to start, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're completely new to AI, is kind of do that exercise that Karen suggests and see where you are spending a lot of your time. And that might be a great way to look for a tool that can start to help you. Like if you're spending a lot of time creating meeting notes, if you're spending a lot of time on emails or scheduling, these kind of like necessary admin work is really great for using an AI tool. And then finally, to learn from others and share what you learn is really important when it comes to AI. So if you're already using anything to do with AI, and this could be ChatGPT, could be an AI note taker, just share in the chat so we can all learn from each other. If you are using AI, if you're not, this is completely fine, and that's why we're all here. So I'm just gonna, cool. Okay, so I'm going to speak to a couple of different tools today, as I say, as very specific use cases. Now, some of you might already be using AI note takers. I think we've got at least one on the call today, and you've probably seen them popping up as you join different things like webinars. What I want to really suggest with AI note taker, of course, they can join the call for you. They can take minutes, they can create action items, and I'm going to show you how that works on the next slide in my demo. But they're also really great for in the minute like planning. So you can be just having a one-on-one conversation with someone about your strategy, about an upcoming event, or about something that you need to organize. I just have the Fireflies app on my phone, and I will just open it and I will record an in-person conversation between me or someone on my team. And the Fireflies will automatically transcribe that, take notes, and store it for me so I can come back to it later. So you can use a note taker for sort of official meetings, but you can also use it on the fly by using the app. And I think this is just a great way to, I don't know, I always find some of the most like important big picture conversations happen when we're not in the meeting. We might be like having a coffee, or we might be like going out for a walk. So by having like a note taker on your phone, you can always have this ready. I'm going to give you a quick demo of what an AI note taker looks like in case you are completely new to this. And then I have some kind of points to remember, or I guess like things to bear in mind when it comes to AI note takers, because I'm not advocating for having an AI note taker join every single meeting that you have. And there are a few things you need to be conscious of when it comes to things like data privacy. I'm going to pick that up in a future slide. But just to give you, I guess, a look at what an AI note taker looks like if you are completely new to this, what you're seeing here is the output of me using an AI note taker in a weekly catch-up with my social media intern, Banuka. So this is a great example of when to use an AI note taker, there's nothing confidential being discussed here. We're just talking about planning, we're sharing ideas. There's nothing that is kind of secretive or that I need to worry about being recorded, but it just gives myself and Banuka a record of what needs to be done. So what you're seeing here, as I say, is what was created after the meeting when we've had the AI note taker join. In the center here, you can see that Fireflies has created an overview of everything that was discussed in the meeting, and you can edit this if anything was captured incorrectly. It's giving me notes here with timestamps that I can go back and revisit when certain things were discussed. And then further down, it's creating action items for me automatically. So this is an amazing time saver for internal meetings, team meetings. If you spend a lot of time with people in your organization taking notes, circulating minutes, this will literally save hours and hours of time by having all of this done automatically. You also have a recording at the bottom, so you can go back and listen, and you can download the transcript, you can download the audio to use off the platform as well if you want. Down the right-hand side here, this is like the word by word, a capture of exactly what was discussed. And sometimes it doesn't get it exactly right. Sometimes there are spelling mistakes with names and things like that, or if someone hasn't spoken clearly, but it's a pretty good record. It gives us this timestamp so we can listen back, and it also gives us this search feature so we can find exactly when something was discussed in the meeting. So again, saving loads of time if you need to go back and think, oh, what was the date that we agreed we would do that? Or what's the outcome of this meeting in terms of actions? Now, in terms of privacy, you can set these so they're only accessible by people in the meeting, they're only accessible to you, or they're only accessible to people in your organization. It's up to you. So I've set this so that only Banuka and I could access this recording. So you can keep it secure within your team or within your organization. Down the side here, there's different features that just help you process the data from the meeting of what was discussed. So you can filter by things like every time a question is asked, or every time a date and time are mentioned. So all this is just real time saving. I'm sure most of us spend a lot of our time in meetings, and then we feel like we spend the rest of our time reliving the meeting and trying to remember what was discussed and what we agreed to and what the actions are. So this, like an AI note taker, can just save you so much time and effort and give you the opportunity to focus on more impactful work. The final feature I've got here, there's a built-in chatbot into Fireflies. And so you can ask questions directly about the meeting if you don't want to scan through or search the transcript. So I'm going to just ask it, when is the next meeting scheduled? But this could be really useful if you're using it for interviews or gathering research. You can ask the chatbot to kind of process the data. So that's just kind of a snapshot. There are, of course, other AI note takers available. I personally prefer Fireflies. I've used a few of them. I think it's a really good tool, but there are many others out there that you can use. In terms of very important, the things to remember when using an AI note taker is to use the human judgment to decide when to use AI. So I don't advocate for having an AI note taker in every single meeting. And there are times when it may not be appropriate. There are times where you want to discuss something just one-on-one. But just because you don't use an AI note taker in every meeting doesn't mean that you can't use one at all. You always want to get permission to record. Make sure that everyone in the meeting knows you're using an AI note taker. I think it's best practice to share the notes with everyone afterwards so everyone knows what has been captured. And of course, you want to be mindful of data privacy when you're using any of these tools. And for Fireflies, I know that cost is obviously a big thing for a lot of us. So there is a free subscription available to Fireflies, so you can try that out. It has limited storage. So with all of these tools I'm going to show you today, there's usually a free version, and then as you pay, you get more features. You get unlimited transcription, you get unlimited storage, and that's just kind of how it works. But there's usually a free tier to get you started. Is there any questions, Karen, about AI note takers? I'm going to move on to my next tool in a second.
No questions. Just people saying, Lucy said they've been using AI as a sounding board, to get, instead of Google, using it to condense text, and long reports and improve writing.
Awesome. So that's something I would advocate for as well if you are new to AI. one way you can kind of get comfortable with it is to sort of start using things like ChatGPT instead of Google. So as you normally think like, oh, I'm going to Google that, you could try using ChatGPT and just see what outcome you get. And sort of so it kind of builds that habit of asking ChatGPT instead and gets you kind of more comfortable with AI. And there's also an app for obviously ChatGPT on your mobile as well. So you can kind of do that on the go. And I do find myself doing it more and more as the functionality of ChatGPT improves. I find it easier to ask ChatGPT than to Google it. And just keeping an eye on the time. So this is the second tool I want to show you today. This I find is a less well-known tool, but for me, an amazing time saver when it comes to reducing effort and increasing impact. So Scribe is a platform that helps you document your processes automatically. It captures what you do in your browser, and then it turns your processes automatically into a visual guide that can be shared with other people. And so I think Helen mentioned volunteers. I feel like this would be a really helpful tool in terms of volunteers if you need to document onboarding materials or how to do certain things. Scribe is going to save you loads and loads of time. I've put the URL down the bottom, scribehow.com, because for some reason there are lots of AI tools called Scribe. So if you want to try this tool, you specifically want to go to scribehow.com. Otherwise, you end up in some kind of like investing share thing. So you don't want to do that. But let me show you how Scribe works because I think it's easier to show than kind of describe. So when you go into Scribe, you can see it's got a pretty simple like user interface. If I go at the top here, on the free version of Scribe, it will capture processes from my browser. But if you want to use it to capture things on your desktop app or mobile, then you have to pay. So I start my Scribe. Now, what I'm going to do on the center of my screen here is just a demo. So what I'm actually doing with this travel request folder, staff travel request form, that's not really important because this is just a sort of made up process that I've come up with for this demo. The important part is what's happening on the right-hand side of the screen. So what you can see is happening is that Scribe is following what I'm doing in my browser, and it's creating automatically the steps that I'm doing. So you would start Scribe off, and then you would do the process end to end that you want to capture and have Scribe running alongside it. Now you can open a different tab, you can open a document, you can change screens, whatever you want, and Scribe will follow you and create these screenshots and steps. And where you're seeing the orange circle, that's where my cursor is. So Scribe is following me, showing where people should click. So you do your process end to end, whatever that may be. And once you finish completing your Scribe, literally in a couple of seconds, Scribe will create this step-by-step process. Now, until you decide, this is not shared with anyone, so you can edit this and change things around. It won't always capture things perfectly, but everything is editable. So if it captures a step or an image you don't want, you can just delete it. You can add links. You can add additional steps if it misses something. And you can edit any of these images or change any of this into a different order. But I hope you can see like this will just get you started on documenting a process so much quicker. And I also think it's really helpful to even help you think through what a process is, like what are the steps that someone needs to do? Because sometimes we can just do things automatically. And it's not until we actually try and sort of document something like this that we're like, how does that work? What you can see here is Scribe will literally capture what I do. So because I typed my name when I was doing the process, it's captured my name. But you can edit, as I say, all of this text and make it more general and appropriate for your process. There is a paid version of Scribe. So what I'm doing currently is in the free version. The paid version does give you more functionality in terms of editing these images and things like that. So once you've captured your process and you're ready to share, you can send a link to people either internally or externally to view your Scribe. You can embed it into a platform like SharePoint, or you can export it to a PDF or any other way. Now, this is included in the Pro subscription. The link to the Scribe is included in the free version. So I'll show you a preview of the PDF just so you can get an idea of like how this looks to the end user. But this is such a quick way of I don't know if everyone else has just spent time like taking screenshots and like copy and pasting and like typing things in their life, but like I wish I had this product like 10 years ago. So this is a step-by-step process that Scribe creates. And you can see this, it's really nice and clean, a really easy way for me to share how things work in my organization with other people in a way that's really easy to follow, easy to refer back to and understand. A couple of FAQs I often get when I talk about Scribe. I do talk about Scribe a lot because I just think it's so useful. What I showed you, as I said, was the free version, which works only on web. If you wanted to do a process that showed something like the desktop app of Word or Excel, then you would have to pay for the subscription. But I think a lot of things we do these days work on web. And there's also other features that lets you blur things if you do the paid subscription. I won't go into all like the very like detailed information about Scribe's kind of data security measures, but suffice to say, this is a company that's used by huge organizations like LinkedIn and HubSpot, and they have very robust data encryption and GDPR compliant standards when it comes to processing your data and everything that they do. And I would always recommend, rather than listening to me about these things, go to the website. If you search for, say, Scribe data privacy, all this information will come up. If you feel kind of overwhelmed by that, then I always recommend talking to your manager, talking to your IT provider, or getting some kind of like more specific advice about how this might affect you within your organization, rather than just sort of jumping in and using a new tool. So just finally, just gonna really whiz through this because I think most of you are already part of our kind of Pravi group. But the platform that I'm building uses AI to help charities find new donors. And I just wanted to give a kind of snapshot of what we're building and how we're using AI. So the problem that we're trying to solve at Pravi is that many small to mid-sized charities don't have the data that Karen was talking about, that well-organized deep data to find new donors. We're trying to solve that problem by building and purchasing a centralized data set that helps give us insights into the type of people who might want to donate to your charity. Now, everything we do in Pravi is completely anonymous, so we're not circulating like names, addresses, telephone numbers, or anything like that. What we want to build is a platform that will tell you who your ideal donor is. So is it male, female, what age group, what location, what salary and interests, which allows you to create a more targeted donor outreach strategy online by telling you which platforms to find your donors on, what messaging to use to capture people's attention, what type of fundraising events do your ideal donors want to engage with. Now, I won't go into, as I say, too much detail because I know most people on the line are already kind of part of Pravi and probably heard me do this demo before. But if you're not, and if you're interested in becoming part of the Pravi group, we are currently giving the platform to UK charities for free in order for them to test and provide us with feedback. For anyone on the call who's interested but is outside the UK, we are building a waitlist on our website, which is just pravi.ai. And we have sort of global ambitions for Pravi. We really want to roll it out to the rest of the world. A final few notes on AI tools. I touched on a couple of these already. If you're unsure, if you haven't, I know not everyone has an IT team, not everyone has a manager. Maybe if you're a solo nonprofit charity founder, but I would always recommend if you're unsure, talking to someone before you trial new technology, because what you don't want to get to in your organization is everyone's using different tools. Everyone is working in different kind of workspaces. It's harder to maintain data privacy if you do that. You end up wasting money on some different subscriptions. And it's also just harder to work together as a team if you're all on different platforms. As I said, most of these tools offer free trials, so you can see if it's right for you. But I would also say that change does take time. So the first time I used an AI note taker, it wasn't as seamless as I made it look then, right? I had to set it up. I had to connect my account. So I had to understand how the platform works. So there is always going to be a little bit of an uphill push in terms of effort before you get to that place where everything feels like it's happening easier and making you or reduce your effort and increase your impact. But as I say, I'm really, really happy to have one-on-one conversations about AI more generally, like away from just what I'm building at Pravi as well. So please reach out to me if you have any sort of specific questions. I'm happy to sort of have that chat. So that's the end of my section. I will stop sharing screen in a second so we can see if there's any questions. Karen and I are both very active on LinkedIn. And so if you're not already connected with us, please find us there. And I'm sure Karen as well will be more than happy to answer any questions if they come up after the webinar as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Let me have a little look at the chat here. So I'm just going to sort of scroll back. So I'm just reading. So I think, Karen, there's sort of a longer question here from Naduka, maybe that's about sort of the effort impact in terms of addressing urgent issues. Would you consider this a division from our core mission, or is it necessary adaptation to pressing realities?
Yes, that's a really good question. And especially when I find ourselves um, in our current world where so many like injustices and issues that we are tackling are interlinked and have like the same root cause. I can't go into like huge depth because we've got no time, but I'd love to chat to you. We could, as I said, I'm offering a free consultation. But I think when we're looking at fighting any injustice, it's about being movement friendly. So around doing things in a way that help others. And sometimes that does mean addressing an urgent need. There, I would warn against like they say that mission drift, like are you expanding your resources? It's I can't answer it in 1 minute, but it would really depend on what your charitable mission is and what you need to deliver. I know in the UK you have to use charitable income for your charitable purpose legally, so there are like laws around it. I'd love to chat to you more, but we do often find ourselves overlapping with other causes and helping out because that's what we do. That's why we do. We care about people.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that that kind of it's always a juggle, right, between being agile and flexible to what's happening in the world, but also not being pulled like around and sort of having that kind of, as you said, the laser focus, Karen, as well.
Yeah, and I mean everything is like something to aim towards, but there's no like definite things because the world isn't like that, and that's not
Mm.
reality. But it's just keeping an eye on what's going on around you. Let's definitely chat about this. Contact me. I think Robin's going to send my emails around.
Yeah, I will absolutely. I'm just sort of having a quick look down the chat. So I think Helen said, do you have to be a registered charity to join Pravi? You don't have to be a registered charity. So we have CICs as well that are testing Pravi. The important thing is that you want to attract new donors, specifically individual donors, and you are set up to do that because that's sort of the narrow focus we have with Pravi is particularly on individual donors. But like Helen, I would love to have a chat as well. I'll reach out after the meeting if you want to, and I can also do a demo and show you a bit more about what we're building. Let's have a look. Lucy's got 2 more new AI tools to play with and sharing both internally with charities to work with. Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Awesome. Okay, so I think we're basically at time. So just to confirm, I will send out the recording and the slides to everyone here and everyone who registered as well. But I really want to thank you all for joining and also thank you, Karen, for doing this webinar with me.
Thanks, Robin. It's been so good to be here, and thanks everyone for your time. It's been great, a great conversation.
Awesome. We'll send out an email with all our contact details. And so we're both totally happy to answer more questions as well offline. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.